The Lost Inn and Pub was comfortable. Back in his room, Hugo again admired the details, especially the original corner sink. He guessed it to be 1910 vintage with nickel handles and spout, matching the shower fixtures he had just used down the hall. It had been a scant hour since the building inspector relinquished his perch at the cove. He was relieved that he didn't embarrass himself in front of Ava. Before tucking his shirt into the complimentary garment bag, he held it to his face for one final taste of the salt spray. The Borsalino was another matter. Lightly infused with rotting whale, the fedora required a damp washcloth and rub-down. Although strangely invigorated by his afternoon adventure to the sea, he had not forgotten why he was on the coast. It was time to rest and reflect on the day's events. When he closed his eyes, Hugo combed Chicken Cove as if it were any other structure in the city, recreating the flow of the current in his head, the break of the waves on the rocks, and the relentless tide, filling and draining the small inlet. The city boy in him was relieved to see that his number one had packed not one, not two, but 3 near-identical Irish linen shirts. He suspected that Sarah had called Kim at Tower Laundry to reroute the delivery of his weekly sky-blue paper-wrapped laundry to Otis Street. While Hugo had come to expect that level of detail in a normal run of activities of the department, this was over the top. Hugo had long recognized his assistant's invaluable skills, but this deserved an extra thank you. He made a mental note to bring back a bottle of Lost Coast wine to Sarah as a token of his gratitude. With that thought in mind, Hugo nodded, then loosened his vintage tie, before heading down the steps to the pub to meet the other essential part of his team, T-Ray. The Lost Pub was filling up. Locals, spectators, and volunteers were trading stories about the whales. Leaning back on the beadboard wall near the entry, Hugo tipped his Borsalino forward, tuned out the din of the pub, and closed his eyes to review his infernal checklist. Sadly, it was all in pieces. He needed Harrison. Hell, he needed another beer. Top of the list, the split. He considered the calf. It was too far up on the sand to have made it on its own. Besides, its umbilical cord was still attached, suggesting that the 750-pound newborn washed up onto the beach still tethered to his mother, or shortly after its birth. On the other side of the rocks, the Big Blue, all 100 tons of her. Clearly she had moved to the tide pool side of Chicken Cove, leaving her calf behind. After observing Chicken Cove from the rocky spine, it was clear to Hugo that even the most calculating and insidious of tides would have required assistance to relocate a whale that size from her beach landing to the tide pools. That only left who helped and why.